Hey Edge, welcome back to another Edge Online, where our goal is to help you know and love the God of the Bible better. Well, this week we're actually going to be wrapping up our series on the Christian life. We've talked about quite a few topics that are relevant to the Christian life, like fellowship, Bible reading, prayer, the church, forgiveness, and last week we talked about a living hope, right? And what that looks like and why a Christian has this living hope inside of them. And this week, we're going to wrap that all up by talking about what the Christian life is compared to in the Bible. And the Bible compares it to a race and having endurance in a race. And I think what I want you guys to know about that is that the reason it calls it that is because, to be honest, the Christian life at times can be really difficult. You think about a race, running a race, you've got to have endurance. You need to build up that cardio to be able to complete that race. You think about Mr. Francisco running his races, man, he builds up a ton of endurance to be able to go those long distances and to run that race well. And guys, that's what the Bible wants us to be thinking about when we are thinking about the Christian life, okay? And so what does that look like and why is that important? Well, it's important because the reality is, in the human life, we are going to be presented with all kinds of different things to pursue instead of pursuing God and Jesus. So there's going to be things like career, there's going to be things, money, relationships, material things, experiences in this life. And the reality is, all those things are shouting at us to follow them instead of following God. And the Bible wants us to be clear. We need to have a one-track focus on the race that is set before us. God has presented us with the opportunity to follow Him, to run His race, and we need to ignore all those other suggestions of running different races, chasing after something else in this life, because guys, at the end, this is the only race that will matter, the Christian life. All those other things we could chase after or run after in this life are going to be empty things. We can't take it with us. It's not going to be relevant for life after death. We are all going to die one day, and we stand before God, and God is going to evaluate what we've done in this life. And guys, all those other things, if done merely just to do them, not with the intention of glorifying God or reaching other people for Christ or living in all ways for the glory of God, those things are going to be worthless. They're going to not be worth anything in the end. And so the Christian life, it is so important to stay committed to running that race well and to run it with endurance, to not be sidetracked by anything else, and to just focus on running towards God and being committed to chasing after the prize, the goal of that ultimate salvation that God has promised, right? And so we're going to look at that and what that looks like. And in fact, in the passage we're about to look at, it references the chapter right before it. So we're going to look at Hebrews 12, but right before that, the Bible tells us in Hebrews 11, it gives us an example of other people who have chose to ignore the other things of this world, and they have set their minds on God's promises, and that's what faith looks like. Faith, it says in chapter 11, in fact, it says, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, things not yet seen. And what that means is faith, think about those Old Testament saints, so Abraham, Sarah, Jacob, Moses, all of these Old Testament saints who in chapter 11 are applauded for that faith they had. They had the promises of God. God had made promises to them, and they changed their lives in a way that now they are fully committed to going after God, chasing after Him, being obedient to Him, and living lives in hope of the things God had promised. And that's what faith looks like. It's looking to the things God has promised that will happen in the future. Things we can't see yet. We haven't seen that. I can't see my resurrected body or the new Jerusalem that God has promised that we will live in one day as Christians, but I am living my life committed to Him because I believe that what He said will come true, that it will happen. And that is what having faith, like the Old Testament saints, that's what it looks like. So we're going to take a look at Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 2 to kind of get additional explanation on that. So let's look at it together. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 2. It says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses," and now what that sentence is telling us is, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, another way of saying that would be, since we can look at all of those Old Testament saints who have lived out that faith of not yet seeing the promises of God fulfilled, but believing them and chasing after God because of those promises He's made. So we get to look at that. We are surrounded by that. You just imagine you're about to start the Christian race. You're at the starting line, you're at the race, and Moses and Jacob and Abraham and all of those Old Testament saints are standing there cheering you on, saying, you can do this. You can run this race. We have ran it, and we have gained the promises of God. And so we're surrounded by those guys, those individuals, those men and women who had that faith and chased after God because of it. So that's what it's talking about. So therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, meaning forget anything else in this life that is going to hold us back from running the Christian race. We need to focus on the race. We need to drop any weight, anything that's distracting us from the race that God has given us, and any sin which clings so closely. So it's hard to run with a big, let's say you ran with a big backpack full of weights on your back. That would be really hard to run the race well. And so just like you would drop that backpack full of weights and then take off and start running, we need to do that with sin as well. Sin is going to weigh us down. We need to get rid of that. And so it says, and let us run with endurance. There it is. Let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. And then it goes on to tell us how to do that. It says, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who, for the joy that was set before Him, endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. And so, guys, we are told to run the race with endurance. We're supposed to run that race with endurance, the race that God has set before us, just like those Old Testament saints did. And how do we do that? Well, we do that by looking to Jesus. He is the one we look to as the greatest example of running the race. He endured the cross, the pain, the suffering of being nailed to that cross, the shame that He experienced in that. And now He is seated at the right hand of the Father in glory. And guys, that's the example the Bible is giving us to do that, to chase after Him, to look to Him. So anytime we get off track, we need to get back on track by looking to Jesus, the founder and the perfecter of our faith. He is the one who established our faith. He is the object of our faith. He is the one we look to, and He is the one who will ultimately bring our faith to fulfillment in the end. When He returns, He will raise us all up with Him, and we will be given resurrected bodies like we talked about last week, and we will, for all eternity, get to live with Jesus in the New Jerusalem, the city of God. And it's going to be an incredible, wonderful experience. And yes, like we're talking about here, faith, it's the assurance of things hoped for, things not yet seen. I don't see my resurrected body yet. I don't see the New Jerusalem yet. I don't see Jesus sitting on the throne yet. But I am trusting, I am believing in the promises that God has made about that Jesus will sit on the throne, that He will give us those resurrected bodies, and that we will one day live with Him in glory. And that's what the Christian looks forward to and gives them that ability to run that race well. We are to look to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith. And so that's what it looks like to run the race with endurance. The Christian life is going to be challenging. It's difficult. We might suffer for Christ, for the name of Christ. We might be persecuted. I'm not sure what's going to happen in our lives, but what I do know is it is all worth it, you guys. The Christian life is worth it, though hard and challenging. The race is worth it because of the prize at the finish line. And that prize is a promise that God has made to us and that will come true. It will be fulfilled. And so we can have confidence that running the race will be the greatest choice we've ever made. And I hope you guys make that choice to run that race with all of us. So guys, that's all I have for you for this wrap-up video for the series on the Christian life. I hope you guys choose to run the Christian race and to run it with endurance, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith. Thanks, you guys. I'll see you again real soon.